Hey everyone, this is Pallavi and today we are diving into the 10th game of the book, The Most Instructive Games of Chess Ever Played by Irving Chernoff. Titled Rook and Pawn Ending, this fascinating encounter between Vasily Smyslov and Smyslov-Reshevsky took place in Moscow 1948. Featuring the Rilo piece, it is a masterclass in endgame precision and technique. Smyslov takes early control of the center, tightening his grip with each move, reminiscent of Tarash's strategic style. Eventually, a weak pawn becomes the breaking point, and once Smyslov gains the advantage, he expertly transitions into a textbook rook and pawn ending. His flawless technique places him among the greats, alongside Capablanca and Rubinstein. Let's jump in. So, White started with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop to b5, a6, bishop a4, d6. Now white played c3, black played knight e7. Stenitz favored this knight development, aiming for g6 to pressure e5 and secure the f4 outpost, though he had limited success with it. After knight e7, white played d4, bishop d7, bishop b3, with the clear threat of knight g5 targeting the weak f pawn with two pieces. h6, stopping the knight g5 move, knight b d2. This knight aims for d5 via c4 and e3 to establish a strong outpost on d5. Knight g6, knight c4, well timed. A routine move like castle allows knight f4 followed by g5, giving black the initiative. So white played knight c4, bishop e7, kingside castle. Black also played kingside castle. Now knight e3, bishop f6, knight d5, rook e8. This rook move is inferior to e takes d4, knight takes d4, rook e8 as played by Keres and UV earlier in the tournament. Black played rook e8, d takes e5. A brilliant move. White gains the advantage with this capture regardless of how black recaptures, with 5 options available. If d takes e5, then knight takes f6 check, g takes f6, not queen takes f6 because queen takes d7 wins a piece. So g takes f6 and bishop takes h6 and white wins a pawn. If knight g takes e5, then knight takes e5, knight takes e5, f4, and then knight c6, queen to f3 with a fine position for white. And if instead of knight c6, if black plays knight g4, then h3 attacking the knight, c6, and then h takes g4, c takes d5, bishop takes d5, and white wins a pawn. So after d takes e5, black captured with the bishop. Bishop takes e5. Now white captured knight takes e5, d takes e5, and queen f3. The queen activates while clearing a key square for the rook. Now black played bishop e6, rook d1. White stands better strategically. His knight dominates the center, his rook pressures the d file, and his bishops are active. Tactically, he threatens knight. Now he threatens tactically knight to b6, winning the exchange here with the discovered attack. If bishop takes h6, then g takes h6, and then knight f6 check, and it's also winning the queen. So after rook d1, black played bishop takes d5. Then here black is eager to eliminate the knight even at the cost of strengthening the bishops. Rook takes d5, not e takes d5, as it blocks the bishop and rook while allowing black counterplay with e4, queen e2, and then knight a5. So white captured with the rook, then queen e7, queen f5. A strong move. The immediate threat is rook d7, attacking the queen and the weak f pawn, winning instantly. Now black played knight f8, keeps the rook out, and if instead rook a d8, then rook takes d8, rook takes d8, bishop takes h6, but not queen takes g6, as rook d1 check, bishop takes d1, f takes g6, a nasty surprise for white. So after bishop takes h6, then g takes h6, queen takes g6 check, and white wins a couple of pawns. So black played knight f8, bishop e3, then knight e6. This prevents the bishop from coming in at c5. Rook a d1. Doubling rooks on open files is a fundamental principle. Rook e d8. g3. Max EV highlights this quiet move's merits. It gives the king a flight square, blocks the knight from f4, and safeguards h4, which will prove crucial later. Now black played rook d6, a desperate attempt to ease d-file pressure by doubling rooks. Rook takes d6. Smyslov denies him the time to finish. C takes d6. This leaves black with a lasting weakness, a backward pawn on an open file. Queen g4, a subtle move. The direct threat is bishop takes h6, winning a pawn, while the indirect threat is rook d2, followed by queen d1 and targeting the vulnerable d6 pawn. Black played king h8. If instead king f8, then bishop to b6 threatens bishop takes e6, f takes e6, queen f3 check, king e8, queen d3, king d7, bishop c5, and the d pawn cannot be saved. So after queen g4, black played king to h8. Now white played a good move, bishop to b6. A strong move prevents rook d8 from protecting the d pawn. It also stops black to gain counterplay with knight a5. White's intention is now, if undisturbed, is to win the d pawn by doubling his heavy pieces on the d file. Now black played knight to b8, an awkward move, as the rook is blocked, but the knight aims for d7 to drive away the troublesome bishop. Other defenses are equally ineffective. If instead knight to c5, then bishop takes c5, d takes c5, rook d7 and winning a pawn. If instead knight c d8, then rook d2, f6 to protect the d7 pawn with knight f7. In that case, bishop takes e6, knight takes e6 and queen d1, and the pawn falls. And if rook c8, then rook d2, knight b8, queen d1, rook c6, attacking b6 bishop and supporting d6, then bishop a7, counter-attacking the knight, knight d7, bishop d5, and then rook to c7, bishop takes e6, queen takes e6, rook takes d6, and white wins a pawn. So black played knight b8, and then white captured bishop takes e6, f takes e6. If queen takes e6, then queen takes queen, pawn takes queen, and then rook takes d6, and the e pawn also gets captured in the next move. So after f takes e6, white played a good move, queen h4, a clever play. The goal is to exchange pieces, removing black's queen, the pawn's only defender. This was made possible by white's triple threat on the 21st move, which is g3, which is now supporting the queen on h4. Now black played queen d7. If queen takes h4, then g takes h4 and the d pawn is beyond help. So queen d7, and now white played queen d8, check, queen takes queen, bishop takes queen, knight d7. It is covered threat on the bishop. So there is no way to save the pawn. If knight c6, then bishop c7 seals its fate. So knight d7, then bishop move to c7, knight c5, rook takes d6, and then rook c8. Also, so after rook takes d6, even in the winning position, it's easy to go wrong. For example, if bishop takes d6 instead, then rook d8, and then f3, b6, and black attacks, winning the pinned bishop with knight b7. A bishop is pinned. So white played rook to d6, rook captured d6, and now black played rook c8. Because if knight takes e4 instead, then rook takes e6 and white wins 2 e pawns, rook c8, bishop b6, and now knight a4, rook takes e6, knight takes b2, and rook takes e5. And now black played knight c4. If black captured rook takes c3, then bishop d4, a good move, rook c1 check, king g2, knight d3, rook e7, and double attack on the pawns. And the rest is easy for white. So black played knight c4, and then white played rook e6, knight captured b6, rook takes b6, rook takes c3, rook takes b7, rook c2 attacking a2, and now white played h4. White loses the a pawn but can rely on his kingside majority. Now black captured rook takes a2. Capablanca noted that rook and pawn endings are the most common yet often complex and poorly understood. This position exemplifies that challenge, but Smyslov's plan provides clarity. White's rook will dominate the 7th rank from a7, keeping black's passed a pawn under constant attack. Meanwhile, white's king will advance behind a pawn shield, and where with the rook's help, it will target black's king side pawns. The pawn shelter is crucial to prevent black from using checks to promote the a pawn, which the rook will contain at a8. So after rook takes a2, now white advanced his king to g2, a5, h5, a4, and then white played rook a7. The rook monitors the passed pawn while restricting black's rook to its defense. King g8, g4, a3. Now if black plays rook a3 to block the king's advance, white builds a shelter with f3 followed by king g3 and king f4. So after a3, white played king g3, rook e2, king f3, rook a2, defending the a3 pawn again, king e3, king f8, f3, rook a1, and now white played king f4, aiming to continue with king f5, f4 if unchallenged. Now black played a2, e5. Precision is key. The premature king e5 allows rook f1, rook takes a2, rook takes f3, making white's win difficult. So white played e5, king g8. Black has little left but a king move, because if king e8, then king f5, rook f1, rook takes a2, rook takes f3 check, king e6 threatens rook a8 checkmate, and king d8, then rook 8 check, king c7, rook a7 check, and white wins after this. So black played king to g8, then king f5, rook f1, rook takes a2, rook takes f3 check, king g6, and then black played king f8. If black goes with rook f7 here, then rook a8 check, then definitely not e6, because rook f6 is a checkmate. So after rook 8 check, rook f8, rook takes f8 check, king takes f8, e6, and then king e7 and king takes g7, white wins. And after e6, if the king goes to g8, e7, and checkmate in the next move. So after king g6, black played king f8, Rook a8 check, king e7, rook a7 check, and black resigned. Black loses the kingside pawns after, let's say, king f8, and then rook takes g7, rook f4, king takes h6, and white's pawns cannot be stopped. Now let's look at the key lessons learned from this game. Number 1, center control. Smyslov dominated the center, limiting his opponent's mobility. Number 2, gradual positional build-up. He improved his position step by step, avoiding premature attacks. Number 3, exploiting weaknesses. He targeted a backward pawn and converted small advantages into a win. Number 4, rook and pawn endgame mastery. Active rook placement. Controlled the 7th rank and the passed pawn. King activity. Advanced safely behind a pawn shield, and then precise timing avoided counterplay while advancing the kingside majority. And number 5 is restricting opponent's counterplay. He tied down black's rook and limited king activity. So these are the principles learned from this game. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something from this game as well. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel to show some support. Thank you. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.